This question is for the Democratic candidates. 2 minutes. Oh. Okay. How will the Democratic candidates lower taxes? Be specific, and also control spending.
As we mentioned before, Frankie and I have pledged to keep taxes flat next year if elected to the Borough Council. This year, the residents, like I said previously, have paid 15 points higher in their municipal taxes. That is larger than in the last 7 years combined. Next year, we don't have much of a choice but to control spending, because every day when I go door to door, everyone's telling me that taxes are their #1 concern. And to be honest with you, they're mine as well. I have a piece of property in South Plainfield, my home, that I pay the mortgage just like everyone in this audience. I pay it by myself, and when those taxes go up, it affects me just the way it affects everybody else. That is why Frankie and I have to make some really, really tough decisions next year. We can't just go spending and doing projects. We all would love to do as many projects as possible, but we really have to take a good look at it. We're going to apply for grants from the county and from the state to do whatever projects we can do that will fit into the budget, but we're also going to have to look at cutting expenses. That's something that I know a lot of people don't want to hear because it could mean jobs, but we do need to look at cutting expenses as well, and I believe that's the right thing to do because everyone knows the economic times that we're in. We really just don't have a choice but to control spending and keep South Plainfield affordable, and we're going to do our best job possible to keep taxes as flat as possible for the coming years ahead.
The tax rate has been stable under Democratic power for the last 7 years. In the last 7 months, we have seen a 15-point increase on our municipal tax. If you take your municipal tax rate from last year and compare it with this year's municipal tax rate, you'll see the tax rate went up 15 points. I will stabilize our taxes and cut down on careless spending. Let's start to look at what we need as opposed to what we want. I just traded in my Ford F-150 for a Honda that has less of a payment and better gas mileage. I would take the same approach towards the borough finances. During a time like this, when everyone is affected by our economy in some way or another, I just don't think a 15-point tax increase is fair. It's unfair to our seniors. It's unfair to our homeowners. They deserve better than that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Candidate Salerno should spend a little time with our CFO. I don't quite think he understands the difference between a calendar year and a fiscal year, but that's okay. He also doesn't understand that the Democrats were the one that introduced the budget that we had to fix. They made sure all the spending was there. They didn't fund it. We had to fund it. We've heard the pledges before. They said no tax increase after the election. There was a tax increase. They came out with these silly man with glasses saying, you believe it, there's a tax cut? What happened? It was a horrible budget filled with $1.8 million of one-time revenue. We have a record of cutting spending. We cut $700,000 from this budget. We're not talking about cutting spending. We are cutting spending. We borrowed 2/3 less than the prior administration every year, $2 million each and every year. And when we were faced with a retiring borough clerk and administrator, we looked to the best people in Borough Hall to fill those spots rather than going out and finding them somewhere else. And you know what? We saved $70,000 by doing that.
Thank you. We'll start with Republican candidates. 2 minutes. The question asks, tax appeals have been a major problem. What are you going to do about it?
Well, Matt and I certainly realized before we got in the majority that tax appeals were a problem. Last year, when the Democrats introduced their budget, they failed to budget for over $500,000 in tax appeals. One thing we weren't happy with was our legal representation when it came to tax appeals. It was a one-man show. We went out and we saw a borough attorney that had a tax appeal specialist in it. We also looked to an aggressive appraiser that would also bring down tax appeals. Now, tax appeals won't go away. That's just, the nature of the game. But we can fight them, and we will fight them. We also have to look at the tax appeals when it comes to budgeting. We have to make sure we have the money there so that we don't have this big budget gap. One of the landowners in town came up to me one day and said, you know what, we were going to file a tax appeal, but because of the attorney that you hired and the appraiser that you hired, we just can't afford it. We're not going to do it because we know we won't win. So we are aggressively fighting it, and we will continue to do it. And that's it.
There's just one other thing we want to talk about. Under our prior borough attorney, we actually missed some opportunities to dismiss some of these tax appeals. Believe it or not, under that one-man operation, a property owner who was delinquent in their current taxes actually filed an appeal and was awarded a judgment. That's just unconscionable. That's why we're not giving our party bosses, we're not giving our sponsors or contributors jobs. We're going out, we're looking for the best possible representation for this borough, and your tax dollars are going to be the beneficiaries of it.
To make the accusation that the prior administration did not go to court and fight heavily for the taxpayers of South Plainfield is absolutely ludicrous. Tax appeals are an issue every year in South Plainfield. They're an issue everywhere in the state. We have to do our best to go to court, to obviously not have to pay as much money as the landowner would like, but we do need to budget for it. My opponents are correct. They used to come into the council meetings and say, you didn't budget enough for tax appeals. Well, I have news for you. This year, $100,000 is in that budget, and this year, $100,000 is long spent. They have not budgeted either. They have their budget this year. It's amazing that this is the one issue that they would come into the borough and just say, guys, you're doing it all wrong, and they were unable to fix it, even though they have control of the budget this year.